Hello, welcome to the show. Today's guest is a buddy of mine, Ben Grossman. He's the founder and CEO of a large payment processing company that works with lots of e-com stores and internet-based businesses. I've known him for a couple years. We do a little bit of business together. We actually co-sponsored. He had an event in Vegas that we sponsored, and then my company Unicorn had a mastermind here in Florida that he sponsored. So we've done a little bit of business together, and over that time, we've built a good friendship. And he's practicing in the Jewish religion, so he's actually on the more strict side of anybody I've met. So we talk a lot about some of his practices. We talk a lot about why he moved from New York to Florida during a pandemic. I can give you a hint. It's and a lot of it has to do with saving on taxes. So we talk a little bit about that, as well as his experience and having a successful marriage. Been married for 20 years, and overall just a really good dude. We have a funny story about when we were in Vegas, January of this year as well. So it was good catching up. I enjoyed it, and I hope you do as well. Like always, it means a lot if you rate 5 stars, subscribe if you haven't, and share with your friends if you think they'll enjoy the show.
This is Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams, where differing opinions are not only accepted, they're encouraged.
All right, Ben, we're live. Welcome to Openly Outspoken.
How's it going today? Super excited to be here.
Yeah, man. Excited to have you. We had our mastermind last week. I know, you're almost gonna come, but you just decided not to. So we'll see you soon. I'm sure. Maybe in January or something. You're gonna come to Orlando.
That's the plan.
Okay.
The plan.
Yeah, we actually had a really good group. I'll maybe on this episode I'll share. Maybe I'll share after, but we announced our new partnership with Tim Bird's mastermind, and we're really excited about that. We already got a bunch of members committed for 2021 just from like a soft little pitch at the mastermind. We're like, hey, we don't have our website up, we don't have basically anything done, but if you put trust in us, we're gonna give you this slight discount essentially. And we got a lot of people that honestly, people were saying it's like Trump. People were saying it was like one of the best events they ever went to. And I think it's partially because I know how to cultivate a good group of people, but I would say it's a lot because so many people were just dying for social interaction. You know what I mean? How's it been being mostly quarantined on your end?
So we have been slightly quarantined.
Oh, slightly.
We've had a lot of people over recently. It kind of like sometime back in September, it was just too much already. And I got 5 kids, so it's hard to tell the kids they can go to school and then they can't hang out with their friends afterwards. It doesn't really make sense. So we've been careful to the point that we've been trying to keep a smaller circle, but we've definitely been having social interactions.
Well, that's
I'm very
good.
social, so like I can't live without social interactions. I'll like lose my mind. Which is really, one thing that's really scary about this pandemic has really been that, and we've talked about it a few times in the past, that what they've done is this lockdown where you're not allowed to see anyone. We've both discussed the results could be worse from this lockdown, even more than the risk of getting this terrible disease. And in fact, I think your last podcast, you discussed that pretty much in depth.
I did. I see you're a fan of the podcast. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for the support.
Once I knew it was coming on, I had to listen, at least to one.
Yeah, you had to listen to one. I appreciate that. You were my one listener for last week, I think. So appreciate the support. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it's called pandemic fatigue, right? That's why you look at California, the strictest lockdowns they've had right now. There are no indoor, outdoor dining, and all these places are shut down now, and cases are record high. I mean, like, people don't give a fuck. They're just going to live life at this point. And that the data seems to be showing that. So you moved during the quote unquote pandemic, and I even hate saying that, during the pandemic, you moved from New York to Miami. What inspired the move?
Well, a couple of things. As you know, I lost my father this year, We wanted to be closer to my mother. That and clearly New York's going to hell in a handbasket. Taxes was definitely a topic of conversation. My tax savings is like insane compared to what it was in New York, paying for non-existent government services, only to be told that I have to stay in my house, which seems like will probably be forever. And a government that just wants to give the money away to people that don't work. Did you know that in New York State there are less people that are employed than there are people that are on welfare?
Is that a
So,
true? Is that a true fact?
so I can tell you that it was a true fact in the past. Whether or not that continued to be a true fact through the Trump administration, I cannot tell you. But at this point, I think we're back to that. A tremendous number of people lost their jobs in New York. Um, and there's a good number of people that are unfortunately at this point unemployed to no fault of their own, and if anything, maybe to the fault of the government. I think
Yeah,
what you and I are seeing here in Florida is that the unemployment rate is much less, and people are going out. Um, some restaurants are 100% capacity. Some have taken their own decision to lighten the load a little bit and spread out the tables to try to make people feel better and keep them a little bit safer. But we really have seen that the social interactions, more than the restaurants, are where people are spreading this disease. So locking down restaurants and closing down schools is it's like using the wrong kind of bullet to take out the plane. Like what are they trying to do? They're trying to shoot at tanks with 9 millimeters.
yeah. Like houses, a lot of studies still show that houses are where the virus mostly spreads because, think about what we do in the daily lives. It's not like other than like bars or clubs, which I go to on occasion. I'm not like a big club guy, but maybe I'll go to a club once every month or two, to a bar once a week, or go out to a few bars one night a week or whatever. But like other than that, and even that, you typically keep some space. Like I'll get I'm a more fortunate club goer, so I'll get VIP, so I'll have some space from all the people. I don't like, being too close and just being crammed, but at grocery stores and things, we're not breathing in people's faces. We typically keep a natural distance. Where it's spreading, and what a lot of the studies show, is somebody will get it, and people will get comfortable in their house and then spread it to everybody in their house. Because obviously you live in the house, you share bathrooms, you sit on the couch next to each other or whatever, and yeah, so it makes complete sense. A lot of the spread actually happens in our own households because of how close we are and how comfortable we are. For some reason, and it's really strange, if you know the person, people are like more comfortable. But in all actuality, like if you knew me, like I was around like 100 people in the last week. So even though you know me really well, like, well, and I had COVID a couple months ago too, so I shouldn't be able to spread it. But we just, all these people are like, oh, like it's my sister, so I can trust her. But in all actuality, like it doesn't really matter if you know. And that's like a weird thing that happened with COVID too, is like if you know them, you just treat them like normal. But if you don't know them, regardless of like their social habits, you know what I mean? It's really strange.
Yeah, no, it's become like just another reason to ignore people that you want to ignore. But what's really interesting is that people who had it feel like they can't have it again. It seems
That's mostly true, Ben. That's mostly true.
to be mostly true. But what I was going to say is that one of the things that we've done in our house is we try not to let anyone come over who hasn't had it. The good news is almost everyone I know, except for my immediate family, my mother and my brother and sister, everyone else we know already had it. So it's definitely helped socially to allow people into the house. We had it back in March, before they had testing and everything else like that. So we've felt a lot more comfortable as a result.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there has been some people that are like, well, what if you can catch it again? I'm like, well, if that is the case, then there's really no point of a vaccine, right? Because that's all the vaccine is a strain of the virus that we think we've all been catching. So who knows, man? I'm excited. Florida's almost back to complete normal, as you know. I'm in Orlando, you're in Miami. I think New Year's, I'm going to have a New Year's party. We're all going to be wearing our mask and using hand sanitizer. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to go into the new year positive and have fun, man. And I'm hoping we can just, between pandemic fatigue and now there's a vaccine, I'm hoping really, really soon we go back to a level of normality. You and me can go to a baseball game and have some fun, and you'll treat, obviously, so it'll be a good time.
So I'll treat for the baseball games, but you got to treat for the football games.
As long as we get a box at the baseball stadium, that's fine. So your business has been doing pretty well throughout all this, right? Isn't that weird? Like some businesses are like crushing and some were literally destroyed, like these hospitality business. But my business, we're having our best year, and I know you guys are doing really well too on Pinpoint, right?
Yeah. So, well, when you're in the online payment space and everyone needs to go online, you're kind of perfectly, ready to go for a pandemic when everyone needs to start ordering everything online. So that's been very advantageous to us. We've seen huge growth this year. We're actually launching a new division starting in January. We've had a ramp up over the last few months, but really a full launch in January. And so we're really excited about that.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. And I'm just if you see me looking down, I'm like taking notes of something to bring up in a little bit. What makes Pinpoint different? So let's just say I'm an e-commerce store, or I have a business and I'm currently using just a Stripe or Square, whatever people are using. What makes Pinpoint different, and why should people trust a brand like you over like a brand like Stripe?
Sure. Well, it's really easy to answer that question when we're talking about Stripe and PayPal and other of those more generic platforms. One is you don't own your transactions, so you have really no access to all the data that comes in about each and every transaction. So someone like you and your partner Max, who are very data driven, you're going to want to know as many details as you can about that transaction so that you can help focus your marketing. When you're using Stripe and PayPal, you don't get any of that information about those transactions. The other thing is,
can you dive on that? What kind of data are you going to give us if we transition everything from what we're doing to you guys?
Sure. So one thing you get is you get the first 6 digits and last 4 digits of every card number. So that's called a BIN number. Based on BIN numbers, you can build a profile out of your customers, ages, average income, locations. You can gather all that data because, for instance, Chase has many, many, many BINs, but they're mostly set up by the card type. So now are they paying for this card? Is this a free card? Is this a debit card? Generally, people of higher incomes are using cards that they can pay for because they like all the rewards. People that are using debit cards are very often not of that business owner mentality or that rewards mentality that you would get. An example I always love to give is, I know you're not from New York, but I think you know the difference between the Bronx and the Upper West Side, right? There's definitely an income disparity there. The Bronx might have a dry cleaner doing the exact revenue numbers that they have in the Upper West Side. The difference is the cost of running those transactions from a credit card cost point of view could be much less expensive in the Bronx than on the Upper West Side, only because the cost of those transactions charged by Visa and MasterCard and the issuing banks will be much higher because of all those reward cards and those special cards. You can't do any of those determinations or really determine your true cost with a program like Stripe or PayPal. The other thing is they are very into flat rate pricing. Flat rate pricing sounds great to a business owner. And let me tell you, if you're just starting out and you're going to be doing $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month, it's probably not a bad decision to get going with those different platforms. But once you want to actually start taking control over your future and you want to be able to really take transactions based on their cost and be able to put that savings back into your pocket, you really need to be working with a company that's able to handle that. So how does that work?
That should be your guys' motto: take control of your financial future. Pinpoint Payments. I like that.
So ours is actually payments optimized. But take control of your payments. That's a good one. So when we're talking about optimizing payments, what we'll set up for a lot of our clients is a 2 or even 3-tiered system based on the type of credit cards that they get. So you're getting charged, let's say, with Stripe 2.95, but you've got debit cards that are coming in way, way less than that, at just over 1.5%. So we can lower that cost of a debit card transaction. The average merchant has approximately 60% of their transactions that are debit card. So if I can lower, let's say, almost by between 75 and 100 basis points, your cost per cost in your transactions every single time for that 60%, I can produce a large savings for you. The other thing is portability, right? So you're able to port around to different platforms, just using different gateways. We're able to report all that stuff back to your CRM. You're not stuck with this Stripe CRM. You can use different programs in order to track your data. And the last and most important thing is that you have someone to talk to. So I don't know if you've ever tried to reach Stripe customer service.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't. So here we have great people that are able to really help with that on staff 5 days a week. And then we have a 24/7 emergency line that we're able to help our clients anytime. And you do speak to a human. We're not so large, so we're able to get to all of your conversations and calls. And you're speaking to someone that's interested in the success of our business. So
that's good. And yeah, we normally don't dive into too many business specifics, but I think a lot of people, and I do at a high level, and some of this stuff I already know, obviously being in the business, but most people don't know like the difference between different payment process, and that makes complete sense. So
we have an article about this, which you can see at pinpointpayments.com. Might as well pitch the website while I'm here. And so there is a well-written article, I think, written by Nico Ruggieri, my partner, who's our CSO. And so you can take a look at that article on our website. I think it's in the blog section.
Okay, that sounds good. And yeah, obviously in the show notes, your URL and stuff will be there. And yeah, I knew you were gonna get some pitching in somehow throughout this, so I just got it out of the way early on, Ben, so we can talk about.
We have a lot more things to talk about.
Yeah. So one thing I also want to talk about is I remember we were in Vegas. I think this was in February, or was it late January or February affiliate summit?
Late January.
Okay, late January of this year, 2020, so almost a year ago, which is crazy. And I was looking forward to a delicious dinner on the Strip from some of the world-class restaurants, some of the finest restaurants in the world are in Vegas. And Ben's like, wait, let me treat you to this kosher restaurant off the Strip. So long story short, we went like 15, 20 minutes off the Strip, and somehow I ended up paying for half the dinner when you offered to treat it, and I paid for the Uber back. So how did that happen, Ben?
People of his own. You didn't mention that. You brought like 3/4 of the party over there.
I was trying to generate you some business. My Ian Clark, and like he would be a good client for you potentially. I was trying to bring some people. So I was like, that he could be a huge client for you. With activation, they're doing some big volume. So somehow we went from you offering and us going off the Strip. That was actually the first ever fully kosher meal, fully ever kosher experience I've had. It exceeded expectations. It wasn't quite as good as I would say STK would have been, but I would go back. It was a solid meal overall. So it was called Burnt Offerings, right?
Yep. I'm still waiting for you to come here for a barbecue, but come down to Miami, you end up oversleeping. We understand how it works.
Yeah. So I sent you the box of chocolates though, man. So I thought that would make up for it.
The box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
So the moral of that story is if Ben offers to treat you to dinner, you get it in writing, and then you come out to dinner.
Well, I'm waiting for you to come down to Miami again, and I'll treat you out to dinner.
At a kosher place?
Oh yeah.
So
they have a lot better kosher places here than they do in Vegas.
Probably, yeah. What can you tell me about, because I don't know that many people with Jewish religion that are as strict as you with kind of like your day-to-day actions. Can you share like some of the religious practices that you participate in? Because I think it's pretty admirable, and it's pretty disciplined on your end as well. Can you talk about some of the stuff that you do?
So kosher is obviously one of them that can be quite challenging when traveling. And what kosher really means, it's not blessed by a rabbi or anything else like that. It's prepared in a certain way with ingredients that are known not to contain any non-kosher ingredients. What would that be like? It would be meat that's not killed properly according to Jewish um, slaughtering rules. It would never have meat and milk together at the same meal or even in the same restaurant. And it includes even the way it's cooked. And so there's all kinds of different details. No shellfish of any kind. So those rules are all in practice. And then a lot of the products you actually eat are kosher. You just don't realize it. You like Oreo cookies? They're kosher. It's good because I love Oreo cookies. So we need to, take an Oreo, unscrew it, put a little peanut butter on it, put it back together. It's like my favorite
What is
meal.
that called when you do that?
I don't know what it's called. It's called like good time to have a snack before bed.
What are some common snacks that like typical like people eat that are kosher that like I eat probably? What is something kosher I eat regularly?
Lay's potato chips, apples and oranges, basically almost every snack. Keebler, most of the cookies are kosher. Most of the potato chips are kosher that are out there. I mean, most snacks you have. The bars, a lot of those bars are kosher. Cliff bars are all kosher. Granola bars, I think, are all kosher, mostly kosher. So the majority of the snacks that you probably have at home are kosher.
Okay.
So that kosher is definitely a big one. It becomes much more complicated when you get into restaurants because then all the ingredients are taken out of the packages and mixed all up, and that's where challenges happen and why they have strictly kosher restaurants. And the restaurants are supervised by someone who's an expert in kosher, and make sure that everything happens appropriately. And then there's the Sabbath, which is exciting and challenging. Comes sundown Friday night until sundown Saturday night. We don't use any. We don't turn on any electricity. We use electricity that pre-existed or on timers, but we don't. We don't make phone calls. We don't answer phone calls. We don't look at our phones. We don't text message, email. So it's really a time that we get to shut down. And for me, that's the greatest day of the week. It's the time I get to spend with my family without any distractions. Especially with cell phones now, they're ringing. I have it ringing 24/7, and just to be able to ignore it for 24 hours is just relaxing. It gives you a way to really come into the rest of the week ready and charged to do the things that you need to do the rest of the week. So those I would say are the two main things that Jews need to do from a practice point of view.
You also go to the church like 3 times a day, right?
Right. So I go to the synagogue 3 times a day: morning, afternoon, and evening. And so that's when there is one around, that's what we do. And there's a few in Orlando, all farther south from you, but.
Okay. If there's not one around, you just skip
then we
it?
just pray at home. You just pray at home.
Got it. Yeah, we for our mastermind last week we had kosher meals all lined up for you, and we just last minute we're like, hey, we told the company like, don't worry about it now. Ben bailed last minute, so we'll just
screw it in a little harder,
I'm just playing with you because you were doing the same for me in Miami, so I'm just trying to. I'm
That's
getting
right.
revenge.
That's good.
Yeah, I had plans to meet Ben in Miami. I think that was Halloween weekend, and I unfortunately something came up, and one thing led to another. There was some Braves playoff baseball on, and I told Ben I didn't tell Ben because he wasn't checking his phone, and I told him I couldn't make it, but he didn't get the message, so it was kind of fucked up. I'll agree.
I still have a whole bottle of vodka for you in the freezer.
Perfect, and I appreciate that, and I felt really bad about it. I apologize.
It's here. Vodka doesn't go bad, so don't worry about it. We'll do it another time. You'll come during the week. We'll make a barbecue. I'll make you some steaks. You'll enjoy that.
Steaks without butter?
Steaks without butter.
Okay. It's because I can't eat milk and meat in the same meal.
Right.
Got it.
Got it. See? You're like an expert here.
Okay, and then what are the side options?
You're Rabbi Adams soon.
Yeah. What are the side options?
Oh, I don't know. What are you into?
Well, what's kosher? Just any type of vegetable you get?
All the vegetables. Potatoes. You into potatoes?
Yeah.
French fries.
Oh, yeah.
Rosemary potatoes.
Let's do a nice medium rare ribeye with some French fries and some vodka. I think that'd be a great meal.
I think we could arrange something.
Maybe a salad too. Can you
Yeah,
do salads?
like a Mexican salad with like a Mexican bean and corn salad.
Yeah, perfect. We're on to something. So I know you wanted to. Oh yeah, I wanted to go back to that welfare topic you made. I will say, and I know that New York is a big fan of giving people a lot of money, but I want to be clear. I think there can be people that receive sorts of welfare, but that's not their primary source of income. So I feel like that's where the stat is deceiving. Like they may have a full-time job, but they could also be receiving welfare in the form of food stamps or some sort of medical care or whatever, but like their whole income doesn't come off of welfare. I think that's the case, right? Not that they like rely completely off welfare.
I think you might be right.
So that
I could have been that, but I think the statistic that I saw was actual welfare, where basically they were incentivized not to work, and I think we saw that during the pandemic, where people, a lot of restaurants were having trouble getting people to come back because they were getting more money from the government to not work on their unemployment than they were to actually come back and work. And anytime you incentivize people that they're going to be better off not working, I think that's just a failure on government's part, and it's leading to the failure of our company and our country. I mean, my grandfather was, a pretty wealthy man. He built his own businesses. He literally started with nothing. He was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and moved to Miami Beach in 1929. He had to live with four other families because they were so poor they couldn't afford anything else, and they lived in a two-bedroom apartment with four families. They actually lived south of Fifth Street because no Jews, no blacks, and no dogs were allowed to live north of Fifth Street at the time in Miami Beach. There was a guy, Arthur Godfrey, a terrible anti-Semite, who didn't allow blacks and Jews and dogs to live up where now all the, a very heavily Jewish area called Arthur Godfrey Road now exists in about 41st Street. So it's kind of funny. Everybody kind of gets their just desserts, right? But
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that it's crazy that was part of what society was in the 1920s. My grandfather built two businesses. He had the largest architecture firm in the South, actually south of Baltimore, and he built a regional bank down here that eventually sold to another bank and sold to another bank. But his point was always that he's always happy to help, but you have to put in the first effort. If you're putting in the 90% of the effort and you still come up short, then I'm happy to help kick in the rest. And if we would create a welfare system that would be more like that, I think that we would see a lot more productivity out of our country. Whereas, okay, you can't necessarily get a job to keep yourself above the poverty line, but we need to see effort in working. I think food stamps works a little bit like that. You don't qualify for food stamps if you don't have a job at all. At least used to not. But if you put in the effort, we'll give you the difference. Is much different than we're basically paying you to be unemployed. And that effort is so important in everything that we do.
I would agree, at least longer term. Like obviously like unemployment benefits I think typically last a year or so. So like while you're like you got laid off and you obviously can't have a job like the next week after you get laid off. So that's where unemployment benefits. But yeah, I think I would agree mostly for a long term option, as long as you're, if you're physically able and capable to work. I agree we should have systems in place. And I would say, just from my experience in nonprofits, like I'm a part of a nonprofit group that does free backpacks, school supplies, haircuts, every year for kids right before school in Central Florida. They're like, 20,000 people or so showed up last year. It was kind of a different setup this year because of COVID, but a massive amounts of kids. And Michael, the founder of that organization, like he suspects, 10 or 15% are there and they don't need it. They're just taking advantage. But a vast majority, from his experience of being in nonprofits for a long time, really do need it. And they have to suck up a lot of pride too, like how difficult, would it be, and like how embarrassing maybe to just have to go to an event to like get your kids backpacks and stuff. It can like really hit our egos. And yeah, from his experience though, a vast majority really need it. But yeah, unfortunately, with any type of system like that, there's always going to be a percentage that takes advantage, and that can give things a bad name too. So
Sure. I too sit on a nonprofit, on the board of a nonprofit, and we do distribute money to people in need, either through loans or through gifts. And the majority of the people that come, they need it. But one of our qualifications is they can't just be sitting around and doing nothing. And that, obviously, if we have someone who comes that is sick, or has some kind of mental or physical illness that they're not able to do anything, it's different. But in general, if you're a healthy, person, even if you're going to go out and make $10 an hour and you really need 15, or $15 an hour and you need 20, then that's where these support systems need to come into play. But to just dismiss it and let people just have kind of free reign of money, I think that's what's brought down this country significantly.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say too, and we don't have to dive too much into it, and this is where I don't lie, I lean conservative on many viewpoints. Where I don't lean conservative is, abortion. One reason I'm pro-choice is because, there's a lot of families that really can't afford and aren't ready to have children, and, that's when we have more children. Not saying we shouldn't educate safe sex and stuff like that. We definitely should. Abortion should be a last resort option, but all that is for low-income families and single mothers is just more government funding that's going to be needed, and that's why I lean left on. I mean, that just seems like rational to me. If this family or this woman's not ready to have this child, strictly from a financial point, I mean, whatever her decision is, but yeah, more than me. I don't even have children. I'm like, I can't even imagine paying. Like, I feel like I do well income-wise, and I'm like, if I had multiple kids to take care of, like, that'd be a big financial burden. So that's just, again, I'm a small government guy. So the more we can inspire people, the more we can, motivate people to find what they like to do work-wise. Not having kids when they're not ready, will allow more people to follow their passions and, work their way up in companies or start their businesses or whatever. So
children are not inexpensive.
Yeah, your kids go to private school too, right?
Yeah, my tuition bill's about $120,000 a year.
Man, that's crazy.
I have one kid in Israel now in school, his second year. The tuition's not so bad. It's like $20,000. Then there's the soft costs, right? You got the flights, you got the food, you got all the other things. Each of my kids' schools, $20,000 or more a year. For, then they get you for the building fund, and then you got to buy a certain number of gift certificates. It all adds up to a lot of money. So if you want to have your kids in private school and get good education, you got to make a lot of money.
Absolutely. Do you experience, you just touched on it a bit ago, do you experience any like anti-Semitism in your life currently?
So, yeah, all the time. When you wear a yarmulke like this out in public, people often have things to say. Some are not, some are very positive too. So I've had definitely experiences. Someone once sprayed a friend of mine. We were walking in the street one day, and someone sprayed us with some kind of white foam and screamed out, "Hitler should have finished his job." But I get a lot of the opposite reactions too. The other day I was at Home Depot, and shalom, I love Israel, I love the Jews. There's lots of different reactions that people get. Everybody seems to have a reaction. Listen, an African American person can't take off their skin. No matter what they do, they're going to be identified as a black person. I feel like as a Jew, it's a similar thing. I try not to hide it. And it's part of who I am, and as a result, each person needs to deal with their own person as they are. Obviously, there's different reactions that people can have around the anti-Semitism and racism. I think they're the same. Right? Racism and anti-Semitism are exactly the same, just in a different form. I don't necessarily feel that everybody handles things the same way. What do I mean by that? I don't know that this Black Lives Matter movement is something that is promoting positivity in the black community. I think there's other things they can do, and I'm really echoing the words that President Obama said. It's not my ideas; it's really his and many other leaders in the African American community. But their protests are an important part of what the United States is about, and I would never tell anyone that they shouldn't protest. But there has to be lines drawn between peaceful protests and non-peaceful protests, and I don't think these are things that, from my studies of Dr. Martin Luther King, that they would necessarily agree with. On the other hand, I understand their outrage and their rage. I don't know if maybe Nazi Germany would have been different had the protests been different. I can't, I wasn't there. Based on my historical understanding, there was a lot that could have maybe changed, that would have changed society as a whole. In the late 1930s, they outlawed all personal firearms in Germany. That, to me, that's one thing that's scary, and one thing that I very much for is the Second Amendment here in the United States, because I think it keeps kind of everybody in check. I was at a gun show the other day, and I had mentioned that they, you never know, with this new government, they might try to take away the guns. And the guy who ran the gun store said, you know what, we have more guns than the military in private hands in this country. It's going to be a very big challenge for them to come and take away all those guns. To me, that's very scary, because that once the guns are no longer in the hands of the people, I do believe that it gives the government the ability to do things like we had in the Holocaust.
Yeah, the Second Amendment was created specifically to prevent government tyranny, taking over. So yeah, I mean, I'm very libertarian, and some may call it even extreme on my Second Amendment views. I think any weapon the military has, civilians should be able to have. So I think if the military is buying tanks, if I as a human wanted to buy a tank, just a regular civilian, I think I should have the right, because what's the point if eventually if the military just keeps having better and better weapons, which they do, and I don't think there are too many opportunities to buy attack helicopters for civilians, but that's my viewpoint on that. Is the whole point is our guns will be pretty useless against tanks and attack helicopters and stuff like that. So but yeah, I feel you, man. I mean, that's actually what I was going to ask you. I had you written down, your opinion on the Second Amendment because of that. Because yeah, I think it could have been a much different story if the Jewish community was armed.
So I said to a friend of mine, quite a liberal, and she was offended that I have so many guns. And I said, let me put it to you this way. Let's say in Nazi Germany, they would have had, all the Jews would have had guns in their house, and the SS officers would have knocked on the door and come in and barged in, and then they would have gotten shot. The first one would have gotten shot, and then the rest of them would have killed the whole family. And that would have happened 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 1,000 times. But over 6 million people died Jews died in the Holocaust. Over 12 million people were killed in the Holocaust, and now they think that estimate may be closer to even 20 million total. Think of this. How many soldiers are going to continue to go in and raid houses if there's constantly one getting killed at the beginning of every raid? Eventually, they're going to rebel against the government too, and they're going to say, nope, I'm done doing this cleansing act. This is not to promote a better country. This is just a way of cleansing and causing genocide. So that's why I really feel very strongly about it. I have a cousin that's an ex-soldier and is actually pretty much against guns at this point. And he asked me, why do I carry a gun every day? And I said, it's very simple. I go into a synagogue every day, 3 times a day. We see what happened in California. We see what happened in Pittsburgh. It happened all over the world many times in different countries where the terrorists have gone into synagogues. I want to be able to be there to prevent that happening to my people. We see that hero in that church about a year ago. The NRA instructor, where the guy walked into a gun in the church, and within 2 seconds, the guy was on the floor.
In Texas, right? The worst place to shoot up a church.
Yeah, not the place to go. So, I think one of the things they're having in California and New York, and one of the reasons I think that we did not see the looting and everything like they had in these more liberal cities, in the less liberal cities, is because so many people are armed. You're not gonna if you break into a house here in South Florida and Orlando, especially Orlando, you got to be concerned about what's on the other side of that door a lot more than if I break into a store or a house in New York City, because it's so restrictive in the guns that you can have in New York City, and even get one is quite a process. So, I think that, I'm not necessarily as libertarian as you are in regards to the Second Amendment. I do believe that a certain amount of background check is necessary, even appropriate. I do think people with serious psychological issues should not be allowed to carry guns. I'm not against any of that. I think that's just common sense. But in general, I am very much for. There was an old rabbi, a very famous rabbi, who was very much about promoting Jews after the Holocaust. And he used to have a saying, "Every Jew at 22." I think that it can be put onto all society. If society would be a society like we had when we founded this country, where every household was ready to be part of the defense of the country, as well as to prevent the country and the government from getting out of hand, I think we would have a much more normal society at this point.
Yeah, and I am actually open to some checks with guns, but it's more of just what we can and can't buy, what's illegal, and what's legal to have as civilians. I mean, yeah, the Holocaust was less than 100 years ago, right? And it's just, we can't forget that's not that long ago. And I used to think that, our military would never do that to its own people, right? But then I see how cultish we get from a political standpoint, right or left. I mean, there's, it's like they're cults, right? I think there's the rise in atheism actually correlates with the rise in, how dedicated and cultish political parties are becoming, because that's the new religion. And I just, who knows? And again, I don't own a bunch of firearms. I own one. I don't go to the shooting range every week. I'm not I typically don't carry it with me, but I respect everybody's right to carry, because again, we never know. And especially with it being so recent. And I don't know if I ever told you this, my relatives, my grandpa on my dad's side, my dad's dad came over here. He was in a Polish non-Jew concentration camp. So a lot of my family is Polish. So I'm sure I have some relatives and close friends of relatives and stuff that died during the Holocaust as well. I don't know too much about that side of my family. Maybe that could be a job for me coming up soon for Christmas. Get myself an Ancestry.com gift. But yeah, man. So what... Because I agree, racism and it kind of all related. What do you feel the solution is for just this hatred towards people of different skin colors or different religions or whatever it is? What do you feel the best solution?
So this is something I pondered a lot. I don't know that I have the best solution. I do know this, that for me and in my life, my personality might lean to it more than others. I just love people. The more people and the more diversity of people that I get exposed to, the more I appreciate them. There was a long time that I was working with a lot of Indians, both Hindu and Muslim, from India, and expats in Dubai. We had a whole team in Dubai that was working for us with our old company. And to me, it was just exciting, to meet these different people with totally different backgrounds, totally different upbringings. We were both brought up in Florida. So to a certain extent, even though I'm a little older than you, I was brought up Jewish. You were not. You were brought up Catholic or Christian. But our upbringing is very similar, because we're in the same, areas. We grew up with great weather. Then you take someone that's from the Midwest. They had a totally different upbringing than us. When you start going all the way across the world and you start meeting people who were brought up in India and China and Thailand, to me it's fascinating. I think that people always try to look at what's different about everybody else. I try to look at how we're the same, and appreciate, not to ignore the differences, because I don't think it's possible, but rather to appreciate and embrace the differences, which is very, very different. To just say, I'm the same as you on whatever it is. No, you're not the same. That's what makes you so special.
Yeah.
If we're all the same, what makes me or you unique? What makes you or I special? So I think the difference is part of the excitement, you know, that you weren't brought up the same as me, that you have different worldviews than I do. One thing that really bothered me about this whole election cycle, um, and really it's been going on since Trump was elected first, a lot of, especially, you know, I don't want to say just the liberals, but it has been more, I've seen it more from liberals than non-liberals, is if you don't agree with me, I can't be your friend. If you don't agree with me, I can't, you know, be in the same place as you. I don't want to be on the same, in the same groups as you. It's a terrible thing. What do you mean if you don't agree with me? I always have a saying, a knife never got sharpened in butter. What does that mean? It's obvious. You can't sharpen a knife if you have nothing to fight back against the knife. You need that diversity and that pressure one way or the other in order to come out with the purest knife, in order to come out with the purest blade. So if you're just, everybody wants just to be able to cut through butter and it to be easy and no one to disagree with you, what are you gaining out of life? How are you becoming a better thinker, a more intelligent person? I think it breeds stupidity, and in itself, it breeds really a reverse racism, or you know, might not be a race in itself, but a reverse hatred of people. You hate me because I don't agree with your views. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so I think education around that is probably the key. Learning to love everybody's differences rather than trying to make everybody the same as you. I've done a lot of marriage counseling since I've been married 20 years. And one thing I've noticed in all of that is when a man and a woman get married to one another and they are exactly the same, it often doesn't work out. But when there's differences in that marriage, they have a lot higher success rate. Obviously, they can't be so different that they're totally on the different, you know, in different planets. But for instance, my wife is quite an introvert. She doesn't like going out. I'm the opposite. I'm totally an extrovert. I totally love going out. I can constantly be doing things 24/7. She needs to like have time to read and time to relax and all these other things. So it really is, you know, the opposites attract. That, you know, that, what was that song? Who sang that song, Opposites Attract? So it's true.
Before my time, Ben, I don't know.
Yeah. So it's true though. Opposites attract. It creates, having someone, you know, in particular in marriage and also in a society, having someone with opposing ideas, opposing views, opposing personalities is how you yourself become a whole person, much more creative and productive person. If I was like left on my own to just like go and do everything I want to do, I'd never get anything done because I'm not focused in that way. My wife keeps me focused. She keeps me, you know, thinking. Otherwise, I'd be like, ah. So it's really important. It's important, I think, in marriage. It's important that in our friends, and it's important in the society as a whole to kind of keep things centered, to keep things focused on our goals as a society. I think we've lost that completely because people have gone all the way to the right, and you have these crazies out there, you know, toting around AR-15s and whatever, and causing all kinds of problems on the right side. You have these total crazies on the left side as well. And I don't think that's the majority of society. I think obviously they're the loudest part of society. And the media loves to exploit them whenever they can and as much as they can. But I think that the society as a whole would be much better off if we communicate better.
Yeah, I agree completely, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this show, is to have conversations with people. Sometimes, like we agree on a lot, but there's obviously some things we don't agree with. A couple of them we've already touched on, and that's okay, right? I think knowing your upbringing and knowing how you were raised, like I kind of understand why, you know, you may think the way that you do, and that's okay. That's also why we have states in this country too. Like different states can have different laws and different cultures, and that's what's great. Like if you don't like New York and you don't like tax rates, and move to a place with lower tax rates and that it's more friendly to the lifestyle you want. I mean, there's a lot of options in this country. We're very fortunate there. So I know that's a good segue, talking about marriage counseling. I know you were texting me yesterday before this combo. You said you wanted to talk about my relationships. Hit Ben. What do you want to know? I'll share whatever you want.
Nah, we don't need to get into your personal relationships too much now. But I'll tell you, like, when you're looking for a wonderful young lady, as I know you are, keep in mind what I just did mention, that you don't necessarily want someone exactly like you. I can tell you, like, looks are important, but then you get married, you have a couple of kids, things sometimes wane in that department. So you can't be only focused on that. You need to think of who you want to spend the rest of your life with as someone that's going to be a helpmate to you, someone that's going to help you grow as a person, help someone who's going to be a good mother to your children, help you be a better father. A good woman's able to do that. In fact, in Jewish tradition, it really is the traditional role for a woman to be the one to help her husband become a more productive part of society. It's usually the woman that has that ability to do it in a subtle way. So that's really important. So I'd say when you're starting to look for wonderful young ladies, I know you just broke up with someone you liked, think about that kind of attitude of who's going to help me achieve my goals, and not just about the excitement of today, but the excitement of, the next 60 years of your life.
For sure. I appreciate that share. I was hoping we would be able to dive into some specifics, man. There's nothing for me. I'll answer anything right now. That's the why I started this podcast, is to be vulnerable with everything going on.
I'll tell you, I told you that I had a 3:00 hard cutoff. So why don't we do a different podcast just about Jeremy's relationships?
Look at you, man. Actually, what you did say is I think I can go a little bit over 3 for this one.
Let me check the calendar.
No. That's okay. That's okay. I think we can end it there, Ben. It was a nice quickie. We got in, we got out, we talked about a few good things, and it was a pleasure having you on, bro. We'll definitely do another one down the road, and maybe we can talk about my relationships. That'll just have to be continued for another episode.
All right. Pleasure's mine, and I look forward to coming back on again soon.
Thank you for listening to Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player so you get updated when new episodes are live. If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support is to leave a 5-star review and share the podcast with people in your life that you feel would benefit from these types of discussions. Visit openlyoutspoken.com for additional details on the show. Find out how to connect with Jeremy on social media and learn more information about Jeremy's personal and business life. We'll see you next time.